Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Speaking of really good times, man, for the news cycle and all of the events that are going on, man, there's a lot going on, man. So I don't even know where you want to start. I mean, Trump and Mamdani had a really interesting conversation at the White House.
I just want to know if there's like a bromance going on right now. Like I'm looking at this and I'm going, JD Vance has got to be a little jealous or envious, because I'm like, then I watched it and I went, Trump is a genius. He's just such a freaking marketing genius. He's like, how I am going to get what I want and stick it to everybody by using this guy in New York to push the same agenda, because who doesn't want cheaper rents? Who doesn't want to build? Like these are all hallmarks. I'm just so... I can say, Len, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. I just am like, I'm going, is this really happening right now? But then I went, yeah, Trump was like, Trump is just such an opportunist that it just kind of, I know why people get sick, because they go, how did he do it? Like, how did he spin that? I don't know. It's there's definitely, I don't want to say there's a bromance thing, but it was definitely, all that aside, because it was pretty funny.
What did you expect to see that happened that didn't? Like, what was the disconnect between what you anticipated and what you actually saw?
I just think that it was too authentic to say it wasn't real.
Okay.
It was authentic. Like, it was way too, it's not going to say it was way too easy, but it was easy and it was authentic. I just didn't think it was going to be a productive meeting, but it was ultimately a very productive meeting. And not so much where Trump came out and said it was a productive meeting. You had major left-leaning or right-leaning media outlets that actually came out and also said it was productive, right? I mean, unless I'm missing something, I don't know. So that to me is a shocker. But I also look at it more deeply and I go, yeah, Trump's going to figure out a way to put development in there, or to develop, because that's really the only way you're going to bring the rent prices down and all this stuff and to make it affordable is you've got to bring cash investments in. You got to bring investment dollars in to drop it. So, but then at the same time, I haven't really corroborated it, but I was going to talk to you about it because this just happened. Did Jerome Powell say that the tariffs are not impacting inflation? I heard something or saw something that came out that way, and that is kind of like leading to the fact that there's going to be rate cuts in December.
I have not heard specifically about the connection between the tariffs and the rate cuts specifically. I do anticipate that the rate cuts will happen, but I haven't heard Powell speak on that, not in the last week or so.
But Secretary Bessent just came out and confirmed, which is interesting. I think you might find this funny. Is this the strategy here, right? Is this a saving grace? But Secretary Bessent actually just came out and confirmed that people are going to get tariff checks. They are going to get $2,000 tariff checks.
$2,000 checks?
Yes, they are coming.
How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts about that?
Okay. Here, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I think that the American people should be getting those because it's kind of almost like an investment return. Because ultimately, everyone's supposed to own this country, right? Like, this land is my land, this land is your land, right? So ultimately, we own the profits of the country. So if there are profits of the country, why shouldn't those profits come back to the people of America? So if it is a legitimate tariff profit and it's not manipulated in some way, like it's legitimate on a balance sheet, like, hey, America sold this and made a profit, and because of your income level, you're entitled to that profit. I think that that's a great idea. I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
I 100% believe that if a Democrat were in office and the same exact things would happen, I think you'd say it was a terrible idea because
I wouldn't.
Yes, you would, Chris.
Look, here's why I say it's good, because you can feel good. I could feel good about getting that type of check because it's not a handout program. It's not a program where it's like I need it because I'm suffering. It's hey, dude, this is. The UAE does it. Like, this is your return of the profit. Like, this is your return of the spoils of the country that you're a citizen of.
And there's such a much smaller population. Because, okay, look, this is how I look at it. If you look at the grand scheme of things, each person with $2,000 in their hands what's going to happen? They're just going to go out and spend it on stupid stuff. There's going to be some that invested and maybe start a little small business. There may be some that invested and get a little cash back return. Some are going to pay down debt, but most are going to consume. And the consumption is good on a micro scale because of the fact that, they're going to probably patronize local businesses. But what about let's assume, because first of all, I don't believe in the fact that the tariffs has created this land, this whole large amount, this windfall. Yes, this windfall of money.
When we see the budget, we'll know, right? I mean, yes. We'll see it.
I just think it's smoke and mirrors. I think the idea of $2,000 though is a bad idea because I think that money would be better served. Let's just assume that it was an actual windfall and it was profits that were coming back to the government, so on and so forth. I think that money would be better spent to reduce the deficit, to pay down, some of it, or use it collectively for other types of programs that benefited the greater good. When I say the greater good, because 2,000 in the hands of many is not necessarily as beneficial as, let's say, billions of dollars going focused towards one thing to benefit people more long term. So like, for example, over the weeks we've talked about, let's say infrastructure issues, because the United States being a first world country and the technological behemoth that we are, we have some major infrastructure deficits and that money could be better spent there. So I just think, first of all, I don't believe that money is real because, the tariffs, I've always said, is a good concept if applied properly. I just don't think that the tariffs have been applied properly. And a lot of us are actually the ones that are spending extra money because of the tariffs anyway. So it's like, you're spending more on everyday goods and services to get $2,000 to spend on more expensive everyday goods and services. I just don't think that it's an effective approach.
Well, I think they're real, and I think the balance sheet will show it, just simply because I just can't believe that you could lie that big about something, but things have been lied about bigger than that. So we'll leave it at that. I'll be surprised. I think you'll be surprised if it's real, and I will be surprised if it's not real. So at that point, the biggest issue I have is that I don't think that I would trust the American consumer or the average American or whatever you want to call it. I hate when you have to say like the average American or whatever. I'm just going to say I would trust any American to spend that $2,000 before I trust any government to spend that money. And that's the problem I have, because you could look at California. California's infrastructure sucks, but California has the biggest tax that they're supposed to collect on infrastructure called the gas tax, 75%, 80% of every dollar.
95 cents per gallon.
Oh, now it's 95. See, when I left, it was 75. So, so let's just say $1, because that's really what it is. So every dollar, and what is gas? $5 and $6 a gallon in California right now?
It's between $4.30 and $5.
Okay, so let's say it's $4.50 a gallon. So that means literally, right? What is it? $1 for every gallon? Like, that's crazy, right? So $1 for that price is going into that fund, but yet the infrastructure sucks. Furthermore, and I hate to pick on California, but they just make it so easy. They lost $20 billion over the last 5 years of where that money was earmarked for homelessness. But the homeless problem has gotten worse, and they don't even know where the money is at. So I don't trust. That's the problem I have, Len. Yes, I think that money could be responsibly spent elsewhere, but I think that it's trickle up economics in this case. But that if you let that money go out into the free market and you let Americans spend that money, you're ultimately going to reduce the debt faster because you're going to have better GDP growth. I think that's the way it works to me, is if we have more money in this economy and people are buying and spending, then ultimately GDP grows, corporate tax revenue grows, which is ultimately the best source of revenue, corporate tax revenue, right? And capital gains tax revenue. And that type of stuff comes into the system. You're going to see that debt lower versus giving it to a bureaucrat to spend it on something that's going to not be spent. And Doge taught us that. The one thing that Doge showed us was we spend a lot on pork belly shit.
Yeah.
And for the audience that doesn't know that, that's an old school term from the 90s when they used to call trash politics that people would spend $500 a hammer. That's called pork belly spending. We do that. So I just don't trust money in the hands of the government, just like the founders didn't trust money in the hands of the government. And we can't control the supply. The source of supply and the source of creation can never go to a government. The supply control can never go there because the government can't manage anything. It just doesn't know how, because at its heart, the natural ways or physics or whatever you want to call it, rules or operating parameters of the universe state that anytime a government gets involved, that it screws up. And it's not because the government wasn't created right. It's because the government is always ran by people, and virtues and human nature doesn't change. So
okay. No, I definitely can understand. Okay. So one thing I want to correct myself, gas tax is 61 cents, not 95 in California.
So still
high.
expensive. So
still high. Yeah.
Why we have infrastructure problems in the California is beyond me with the amount of money that's earmarked for transportation in that state.
I agree.
Now, not saying it's all bad.
Okay, I wanted to throw another idea towards as it relates to if this tariff money is going to be distributed. What are your thoughts about the idea of the federal government taking that money and distributing to states, and then the states then work with their electorate to decide how that money's spent? So maybe there's a special election, or include that in the midterm election ballot and say, hey, Texas has X billion dollars to spend. Let's take a call for proposals or ideas or things like that. Reach out to your representative. And, I know it'd be a lot more complex, but I just think ultimately that money would be better spent with better, with each state getting its own chance. What are your thoughts about that? That's just a thought that came to my head.
Yeah, I like that idea. And immediately when I hear that, to me, it pops my head. I said, cool, give me an election at the end of the year to not take FICA for me or SS tax for me. In lieu of that, hey, at your end of it, you go, hey, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You're married based on your last year. You guys each get a $4,000 tariff refund on your credit. Get the Democrats shut down the government for tax exemptions or tax refunds or tax breaks on Obamacare. Why did they go in there and constructively talk about that? Hey, Trump, you said call Trump out call him out. Put your money where your mouth is. You put your money where your mouth's at, Trump. You say your secretary said $2,000 tariff checks are coming. Great. We don't want you to withhold, or we don't care about the breaks for affordable health care anymore. We want that money now instead diverted to that now. Awesome. See, that's the thing. Why didn't they pull that card? So yeah, I'd rather have at the end of the year have an option to say, hey, cool, you have a $5,000, $6,000 tariff credit. What do you want to do? I don't know FICA this year. No, for people who are self-employed, no, a portion of your self-employment tax. Let them do an IRA deduction if they don't have an IRA deduction. I think then you're talking. Now you're talking, because now you can build tax deductions or tax incentives in there and for the consumer to have choices with their profit that they should be getting from the country, the corporate states of America, the United Corporate States of America. Right?
Yeah. I just think it's just, putting money from one hand to the other, because we're the ones that's paying extra, not the other countries. And that's the whole bill of goods that's being sold. We're paying. I don't
think so. I think it flips. I think it flips eventually. I think it flips because it's going to come round robin because they can no longer use the America to use as a cheap import or a cheap carry trade. They can't use it anymore for that they can't use it anymore like that. They can't take advantage and currency manipulate with the tariff. That creates that too for them now.
Okay.
China's been doing that for decades. They've been currency manipulating.
I think
their currency on purpose.
Yes, and that's true. I just think that your argument would definitely be super solid if manufacturing were to come back to the United States. And we've had conversations about that in previous conversations, so I don't want to rehash that. But there's 1,001 different ways that money can be distributed.
Yeah, I just don't think manufacturing comes back the way we think it. I think
No, it's
manufacturing comes
not.
back in a different way. Chip foundry, chip manufacturer, super AI production, advanced model learning, teaching, all of these things. Like, there's a ton of stuff, right? But again,
And
here's a good
that means a lot of blue collar Americans are going to be, left having to figure out how to adjust what they do. And, I think that's just a natural
I don't
part
think so. I don't think so, because if we figure out how to get into orbit, high Earth orbit, and I know this is kind of go a little fringe, but we're there. We're right there. If we figure out how to produce nuclear energy in high Earth orbit, right? We figure out how to recycle off the planet. We figure out how to do those things. You're talking about massive amounts of opportunities in employment, and it's not. I think the whole system's going to change. I don't even think people are going to really be employed anymore. I think it's just going to change vastly. It's going to change. What's interesting, Len, is what makes me sad, Len, is I don't think you and I are going to be around long enough probably to see a full change. But that change, we are living at the beginning decades of of what it was like with the Industrial Revolution. I think, anyways.
I think it'll be.
Point.
And I think it'll be interesting to see how all of the transition takes place. But you're talking about the tariffs right now. I mean, you and I are fairly young. We're not in our 80s or even 70s. We're not even in our 60s. And so when you're talking about people being taxed right now and just this whole issue about affordability, even Trump's been talking about affordability. You go to the gas station, you go to the grocery store, you go out and eat. It's a lot more expensive. And then when you're looking at the housing market is much more difficult to break into if you're a Gen Z and a Gen Alpha. So those folks don't have 30 and 40 years to wait for this industrial revolution 2.0 type of a change. There needs to be some way for folks to be able to survive and to stop this runaway freight train of costs. And so, I think we gotta solve that problem.
Yeah,
soon.
and that's the big challenge right now. That's the big elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about is that, okay, the U.S. has had, 38 trillion in debt, right? Mm-hmm. And most countries follow right behind us. Most countries follow right behind us. Okay, no one has ever dealt with that type of problem. No one's ever gotten themselves out of that. Like, we can, unless I'm wrong, I don't know, Len, we're having this conversation in real time. Can anybody raise their hand right now in the room on the planet Earth and say, yeah, I've confidently dealt with 38 trillion. I've paid $338 trillion worth of debt back. Has anyone said that? Has anyone ever done that?
Nobody's ever been that deep in debt. But,
right.
But I see where you're going.
How do you get out of it, right? So that's where a lot of people start going right now, Bitcoin is, you're gonna have to rebate. You're gonna have to completely change the currency and all those things. That's the only way you could. Legacy debt. That was legacy debt. The United States has $37 trillion worth of legacy debt. What's legacy debt? Fiat debt. Right, but now we're on the Bitcoin, and I'm just saying Bitcoin because that name gets thrown out there the most, mm-hmm. Right? How much debt? No Bitcoin debt though, but the U.S. has $37 trillion worth of fiat debt. Like, how do you're going to see that convergence? I think you're going to have to see some type of convergence, and that's why I think, because how long inflation went up by 0.8%. How mm-hmm. long have we been in an inflationary period, Len? Is this the longest inflationary period? Because how do you get out of this? And I was saying this to Mary, I think 24 hours ago, or maybe it was today. We were driving somewhere. I said, "This is it now. This is we're never going back. Like, this is the new normal now. This is the new baseline now, based on where we're at. Like, prices are never going back down ever again."
Prices have never gone down historically. I mean, because if you look at it historically, when you look at cost of living adjustment, which is lockstep with the inflation rate, it's typically 2% per year. And so costs have always gone up. I mean, if you go back and look at McDonald's burgers now versus back in the 50s, housing, cars, everything, nothing right. goes down. It's just the rate of acceleration slowing down commensurate to income. And so So, there's a lot that you said to unpack. One, when you talk about the amount of national debt we have, the one thing that happens is what's different is that the United States, the dollar is the world's currency, the world's reserve currency. So because it's the world's reserve currency, what the feds do and what the U.S. government does is they're looking to print money out of it. But then what that does is it debases the currency. And that happened that happened during the Roman era, that happened during the German era, that happened, with the English, and happened, it happened over and over and
It's
over.
It's happened.
And it's happening right now.
It's happening now.
And so the only way, and you talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the only way to get out of that is to be more productive, faster than the debasement. And you've got to stop debasing the currency. And in order to do that, some way we've got to start decelerating the amount in which inflation goes up relative to income. And I think, looking at the gold standard, that's not a realistic answer because there's not enough currency to stay with the amount of GDP that exists throughout the world. So you can't have a gold standard anymore. And so I think crypto is going to play a role, but I think hopefully, you start to look at other currencies, starting to, get into a place where it's not going as, rapidly declining. And so I say all of that to say, Chris, that we really, really need to take a look at what's going on economically. We need to look at what's going on in terms of our production. We need to look at what's going on in terms of our ability to not continue to debase the currency just by printing more and more. And so, I'm really concerned.
And it's interesting what you just said about how, we're not that old, right? Because we're not. We're not. So just this morning when I was doing business planning and structuring, what I'm doing is putting everything together for a 25% annual income growth. So I want to scale my income by 25% growth every year over the next 10 years. Okay. Because I know there's absolutely no way. 25% is a baseline for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, because there's just no way if for me in my mind, if I'm not growing my income by 25% every year, there's just no way with my kids and what I have, there's absolutely no way. So, and I put it through three different chatbots. I put it through ChatGPT, I put it through Grok, and I put it through Anthropic. I put it through all of those. Okay. Which I want to say Anthropic's is it's Claude. I want to say it was Claude. Okay. So I put through all those, and every single one of them, you know what they said? This is not achievable with a traditional W-2 income.
It's not. Absolutely
It's not achievable.
No.
It's not achievable.
25% would take you 10 to 15 years.
Right. So and when you look at the dollar, there's a chart. You could look it up. If you look at the dollar compared to the S&P 500, and you look at the dollar when the dollar was made a fiat currency, right? Versus the S&P the same time period, the charts are completely inverted. The S&P is like up 100 over 100%, and the dollar's down. So the dollar has been losing its value. It's been inflating down or inflating up, or however it's said properly, since it's been created. And that's the nature of all or any fiat. That's always the nature of any and all fiats, is that it's going to do that. So I think that, crypto is going to be that. Right now, it seems like it's the only viable thing that you could to use to get out of that. And then and again, this is just me thinking, but you could potentially live in a world where you have fiat, where you have legacy fiat debt versus new debt. And the whole world changes, and who knows? But to me, the biggest issue that I have is that I just wish politicians would stop saying that they could fix it, because they can't. And that's what kills it more and just kind of regulates it more. But going back, I mean, and going back to it, Len, just to switch a little bit to it, is, a lot of people are saying there is a bubble right now. And I know in staying in the spirit of finance, a lot of people are saying there's a bubble. Look, NVIDIA is if you go back and you blink your eyes and you look at the .com bubble, because obviously I don't want to talk about real estate because real estate was real estate. But if you look at a .com bubble and you look at a tech bubble, because these are two in the same wheelhouse, you have AI, which is tech. The Cisco was that company, right? Back in the day. NVIDIA is like, I don't know, what is NVIDIA? NVIDIA is like I think it's like 46% or something like that. It's GDP, it's valuation over its earnings. But they released their earnings call last week. It was a smashing success. They're killing it still. It didn't crash the market like everybody. There was a little bit of pullback, but again, the markets are back up a little bit, or back up. Bitcoin's going to go over 90,000. I think it's like at 89, 89. It almost went under 80,000, or it might have dipped below. I can't remember. But what do you think that outlook looks like for is there an AI bubble? Are we going to see a little bit of a? Are we going to see a pop? Is it going to be as huge? Michael Berry's still shorting the crap out of everything and still selling and sell everything. We didn't see, anything crazy happen, but still, this is the time. This is the week. If something weird's going to happen, it could happen this week or the first week of December. What are your thoughts on that? Where are you at with that?
So I think we are in an AI bubble, but I think so. One of the things that Michael Berry said is he said it's not necessarily because of the tech inefficiencies. It's because of the emotions attached to the value of those companies. And so whenever public sentiment is exuberant, you need to have the opposite approach, because we tend to overinflate things when they're good, and we tend to overcorrect when things are bad. When you look at the stock market, when it trends up, it goes up quickly, but then when sentiment changes, it goes down exponentially faster. And so in the case of NVIDIA, when you look at Palantir, there's almost this closed loop in which the companies feed each other. And so there's this fake feedback loop between the different AI companies and NVIDIA. And so what could potentially happen is you have all of this hysteria and hype and over exuberance about what AI is doing. Eventually those chickens are going to come home to roost if that day is going to happen. And if that day does happen, what's going to happen is you're going to have all of these, like, for example, Palantir, they're really big on government contracts. And so because they have all of these government contracts, what happens when there's no need for that number of AI chips, those chips are just going to sit around, and because they're not productive, they're not going to be sold at the same level. And when earnings come in and the numbers go down, people are going to rush away from it to say, you know what, let me hold off for a while. So I believe that overall AI technology, the United States is on the forefront in the world. But I think what's going to happen is that Michael Burry is going to turn out to be right. And I believe there's going to be a massive, massive selling off of AI stocks. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. I think it's going to be next year, sometime during 2026.
I think what you're going to have is somewhere along the lines. I don't think it's going to be as massive, but what I do think you're going to see is, and I have seen that often, where you see, and there's a lot of them in there. You got OpenAI in there, Microsoft, Oracle, TMC. You got all the Broadcom. You got all these guys that are feeding each other, right? Hey, I buy from you, you buy from me. I'll invest in you. Boom, 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 boom. Right, and they're all going back and forth. I mean, if you didn't have AI on the S&P, you wouldn't have the year that you had, right?
No
you
doubt.
Just wouldn't. I mean, that's what's driving the markets right now. Mm-hmm. That's completely. The scary thing is that that's the only thing really that's driving the markets right now, is all that, right? So whenever there's something all in one basket like that, that's a very scary situation. But what I do think you're going to see is you're going to see a consolidation, and you're going to see a lot of absorption, and then we'll come out of it with the players who are really the players in the space. I agree. But I think that AI is really gonna I don't think that anyone really knows yet how to apply it. I think obviously the cost saving is like the number one thing. Everyone's, oh my God, productivity, cost saving. But I think realistically right now, once people understand where it's going to go, how it's going to implement, how it's going to scale in regular business, are we going to put people out? Also, too, all these states are going to release AI regulation to make sure people don't, lose their jobs and things like that. Like, you're going to see this stuff. You're going to see No Robots Act of 2019. That's my age. Right? No Robot Act, the Anti-Robot Human Act of 2050 or 2045. No human's job shall be replaced by a robot. You're going to see legislation like that, probably. So I just think that it's going to be a lot. I think the brakes will come on, so that you don't see that crash, that human crash of where do people work now? How do people make money now? How does this machine work because this machine hasn't really changed in a long time. This is a very old machine that we're running right now. The machine of the economics of the world, the how it works, it's a very old machine. So to completely change it that way, it would be such a shock. It'd be like losing 100 pounds in one day. Even if you put the best AI computer in there, you're going to shock the crap out of the system, because ultimately, what are you going to do if you fire everybody and no one has a job? What are we going to do? I get it, Bill Gates, and I don't want to mention, never mind, I don't want to say it. I just don't want to say it. I don't want to go down that hole, I'll say it this way. Idea, Chris. Yeah, I don't want to say it, because realistically, ultimately, what are you going to do? What could you do? All right, let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's assume tomorrow AI is an astounding success and 70% of the American workforce or worldwide no longer has to have a job. What do we do? Everything would crash. The AI companies that need your money so that you could scroll on the AI and use the AI or whatever, or buy the products that the AI is making ABC company more efficient to make. I can't go buy the widget anymore because I don't have a job.
Yeah,
I can't buy a house anymore because I don't have a job.
You said earlier, man, you talked about universal basic income. That's the panacea that they're talking about.
That I think, and that it goes in the way of, again, that you're gonna ultimately, if you think vastly into the future. And again, I don't know anything, but ultimately, as of right now, my brain automatically defaults to that, going, well, eventually we're going to get to a point where money no longer. There's just so much abundance in the universe, and eventually it becomes so efficient to harvest and produce such that money is obsolete now. Trade is obsolete now, because anybody can, like the Jetsons, anybody can buy a food or rack a cycle and make a cheeseburger in 2 seconds. Anybody can do that. So, honey, can you pick up? So when you make your order today, can you please make sure that you order some more 80-20 grass-fed amino acids so that we can produce more hamburgers? So we can grow hamburgers tomorrow? You won't need to grow cows anymore. You'll just grow the meat. So organically. Yeah. Organically. You'll get to that point.
Well, I think I'm typically an optimistic person, but in this case, I don't have that same degree of optimism you have.
You're doom and gloom about the technology revolution and all that stuff. Mary's the same way. She doesn't believe in it. It's going to work out.
I think it's going to increase efficiencies, but I think human nature is to always defer to greed and hoarding. And I think that as we get more opportunities for fewer people to have a larger concentration of wealth, I think people naturally will trend toward that. I think the only way to really avoid that is for people to come together and really have a pluralistic approach as to what the future may look like. Because to your point earlier, we don't know what type of new jobs are going to be created because it's not on our radar yet. I believe, because if you look at every single transition, when people were growing corn and wheat, and everybody were farmers, when this whole idea of the Industrial Revolution came about, people were very concerned about what jobs would look like. And, everything transitioned just well and the world got richer. And so if you look at the global trajectory in terms of the quality of living, technology has done nothing but increase the overall improvement of people worldwide. The only concern that I have right now, because that's an optimistic view. And I started off by saying I have a pretty pessimistic view. My pessimism comes from the standpoint that because technology is such a tool that can be used to concentrate power and influence and the control of resources from the many to the few, you need fewer people to do even more work productively, that people have the ability to hoard those resources. And so I hope that we'll take a collective approach and really understand that if you have a small number of people who are abundantly wealthy and the overwhelming majority of masses are upset and they're broke, you're not going to live in peace anyway, because when people get to a point, I think there was a study that showed that once you get to a point where more than 30% of your income is being spent just on food and sustenance, that's when stability starts to break down. And I think, the only way to maintain that type of stability is to make sure that people have some way of taking care of themselves and taking care of their basic needs. So the only way, to close my point, that I really see out of it, to try to piggyback on your optimism, is that if good means of production are so efficient that money becomes irrelevant, it's just a matter that we all have access to whatever we need. And then some other type of hierarchical stratification would differentiate those from having, your home, your food, your shelter, 1 or 2 trips a year, to, overall abundance with your yachts and, your mansions and things like that. I think if we ever get to that point, there will always be some mechanism for stratification. But I hope that there's a point in which money doesn't become, as necessary. But then, I don't want to get biblical or anything like that. But now, you hear a lot more conversations about this whole idea of, this mark that you have to, take on and all of that. So I don't want to talk about any of that stuff, because this is not the setting for that. But anyhow,
I think about it this way too, right? All right. With job creation, right? As you're saying, I'm thinking about this. Could you imagine today? Could you imagine 10 years ago or 20 years ago that everyone could be the opportunity to be a movie star or a journalist or any of the things? I mean, think about what TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Reels and social media platforms like those have done. It's opened up a totally different economy. I mean, throw them all in there now. I mean, so many people make money as influencers. Like, think about it. Influencers didn't exist. Right? Influencers existed in a sense through the traditional channel of what? I got to become famous, become a movie star, and there you get, or an art, or a musician, right? Those were influencers. Now, if you got 20,000 people, 2 million people to follow you on Instagram, you're an influencer, which means you could sell product. Mm-hmm. Because if so-and-so sees me with a really cool cup, they're going to pay me for that. So that I see is kind of opening. And I don't want to get too utopian and all that stuff, but realistically, if you think about it, people in a true free market open society where the country is legitimately ran by an elected body that's for the people, by the people, the profits of all the countries should be going to the people. So therefore, taxes should be virtually almost nothing or zero. And therefore, people shouldn't really have to work unless they want to become uber wealthy and create new stuff, because that's the thing. Human invention and human ingenuity is always going to be there. Someone's always going to think of a new way and a new business. So if those people want to still do that, you can. If people like you and I want to strive above and beyond, great. If you just want to live baseline and be an artist and be an influencer and be and live like they did in the Greek Empire, where you just sit around and eat grapes all day long, you could do that. But just know that this is what that standard looks like. The universal standard is this. If you don't want to work and create businesses and figure out how to be more productive in the world, then this is what you get. This is the standard. And you don't get upset about it. And you don't be right about it. You know what I'm saying? And if you want to go above and beyond and you want to go through that pressure and that risk-reward scenario and stress, which is capitalism, which is entrepreneurship, which created everything that we have today, including AI, because of entrepreneurship and free market, then you can go do that. But don't get mad when so-and-so over here gets his basic universal and also started a company and as a result has 10 more million in crypto or fiat or whatever the heck it is, right? That's kind of the way it would go.
Rise. The cream will always rise. And the whole idea of the Pareto principle, 80-20, that is a universal principle regardless. So I agree with you. I think one way, as you were talking, I was riffing in my mind about, okay, how could something like that really become a reality for people? Imagine this. Imagine 3D printers in every house. And all you need is the raw material to be able to produce whatever it is you want. Whether it's a car, you just need rubber and aluminum alloy, whatever. If you wanted to build a house, I don't think, houses always are going to be reliant on wood as much because, you have these plastic fabrications and metallic fabrications that are much more precise. They don't wobble. They're weather resistant. I've seen some technology that's emerging around that. So if every home had some type of 3D printer and then you just make your own goods and then your capacity to acquire goods and services, the only concern that I have right now, because that's an optimistic view. And I started off by saying I have a pretty pessimistic view. My pessimism comes from the standpoint that because technology is such a tool that can be used to concentrate power and influence and the control of resources from the many to the few, you need fewer people to do even more work productively, that people have the ability to hoard those resources.
That direction.
Yeah. I think something like that would certainly be possible. I think we're probably 20 years away from that, but I definitely with my own eyes have seen existing technologies that lend itself to something like that being a reality, regardless of where you live in the world. Because, as long as we have the resources to create it, there's, between 8 and 9 billion people on the planet, but there's probably, there's a fraction of that in terms of the number of households. And so, you have a few billion 3D printers and some community 3D printers and so on and so forth. Now you democratize manufacturing and you've got the ability to create anything you want potentially.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think we're going to see a lot of new avenues, but again, life is life, and you've got to figure out what to do to hang on, and you got to figure out how to get better and improve. And that's just the world we're in. And you got to be thankful you're lucky you're in America, because they just recently released the statistics. What was this? I was watching something. It's like, did you know African American women are starting more businesses today than any other ethnicity or gender in America today?
I did. I heard that.
African American women. So you definitely still are in the best place to weather this, because this transition isn't a country transition. This is a worldly transition. 100%. So I say being in America, you're probably in one of the best situations. But to change gears a little bit, I'm very, very surprised that things have seemed to cooled off a little bit on the Epstein stuff.
Okay.
Obviously, the bill has passed. They're going to release the files. Marjorie Taylor Greene is stepping down and not running for a re-election, and Trump goes, because you suck, because your poll numbers are crappy, and I'm not on the ticket. I'm going, look at this guy, right? But they're going to release them. They're going to release everything. You're already starting to see some of the higher profile names that are starting to fall down, like Larry Summers. His life is unwinding. You're going to start to see a little bit more. Hakeem Jeffries was in some tumultuous hot water for a little bit, but I think they realized that it wasn't as deep as it was. But still, I think AOC is going to primary challenge him. Someone's going to challenge him. It almost seems like, and would realistically be the next coming up in the old guard, right? I mean, he was kind of an understudy of Schumer and Pelosi and all those guys. So the powers are shifting. The powers that be are shifting a little bit. I don't think again, Epstein stuff might be looking out to be a flop. I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. It might not be sensational. I think I'm sticking to the fact that I think it's a distraction to teach. That I see is kind of opening, and I don't want to get too like utopian and all that stuff, but realistically, if you think about it, people in a true free market open society where the country is legitimately ran by an elected body that's for the people, by the people, the profits of all the countries should be going to the people. So therefore, taxes should be virtually almost nothing or zero. And therefore, people shouldn't really have to work unless they want to become uber wealthy and create new stuff. Because that's the thing. Human invention and human ingenuity is always going to be there. You're going to have as big of an impact as everyone thinks they're going to have with these Epstein files. What say you, sir?
Okay. I in the macro, in the big picture, I think you're right, but I think because of a different reason. So what I believe is that when you had the House and Senate pass they ruled on releasing the files.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
They made up a job for themselves to release information that should have been released anyways. So,
right, exactly.
I mean, it's normal government. Let's make up a job for us to actually do what we already should be doing anyways, which again goes to my point earlier of I don't trust them to spend that money. I trust Johnny down the street to go spend it on some Coca-Cola
so it was called the Epstein Transparency Act, HR 4405. And so when you look at the fact that it was passed, I think there's two phases. The first phase, that was to release the pressure. So people are now saying, okay, we like the fact that Congress decided to release the files. We're not exerting the same amount of pressure because they passed the bill. That gives them 30 days to conspire, to strategize, and to figure out how they're going to move forward. Because once these 30 days pass, because if I'm not mistaken,
that's the curing time to release.
They passed, yes, 30 days. So the bill passed on the 18th with the House, and I think on the 19th with the Senate. My dates might be off, but I think that's what it is. Okay. So let's just say by the end before Christmas, those files should be released. Now, Pam Bondi has already been in front of the viewing public saying, okay, we're going to release them according to the law. We're going to be, we want to make sure that we protect the identities of the victims. And we also want to be mindful of issues of national security. And so I believe those were the talking points to plant the seeds to suggest that they're not really going to release the files in their entirety. I think they'll release them, but they're going to be redacted significantly, because she mentioned the fact that there were over 30,000 files already released. Well, that's just to suggest that they're being transparent and they're being proactive, but 33,000 files that don't tell us anything is really meaningless. And so for her to put weight on like guns, posters, cars, anything you want, if you can imagine it, a 3D printer can print it. And
it is unbelievable.
Machine parts, everything. Yeah. I think something like that would certainly be possible. I think we're probably 20 years away from that, but I definitely with my own eyes have seen existing technologies that lend itself to, or they've released the files, but it, one piece of paper has, 3 names on it that's not redacted, or 3 pieces of information that's totally inconsequential. And so I just think that we're not really ultimately going to get what we're looking for, which is who are the high people in high places and powerful, influential people that were pedophiles and raped and victimized. Oops, they are word. I don't want us to be, taken off of YouTube, but who hurt these young ladies. And so anyway,
abused.
Yes.
Mentally, physically,
mentally, emotionally, all of those. Yes. So I don't think we'll ever get to those names, because I think these 30 days, they'll be able to cover the wagons and then figure out a way to get around it. That's what I believe is going to happen. And it's really sad, because when you have the same people originally saying they were going to release the files, we have the files right here, we're ready to release them, and then something happens between that day and now, especially for Pam Bondi to do a complete 180, it's very, very troubling, because it does not look like transparency at all. It looks like a big cover up.
Well, here's the thing. What Justice Department collected all that information? Wasn't it Trump's? Isn't he the one? Isn't it his Justice Department that got all that information, that convicted him in 2018, whatever it was? So that just is further strange to me. Like,
yeah,
they
exactly.
already know what's in that shit.
They
already know. It's their info. It's their stuff. It happened under the Trump administration. The first administration is when they collected all the Epstein files. Mm-hmm. So they already knew what was in that stuff. That's why I'm saying, like, I can't. They used it as a charade. Man, it's just.
I just think that some nefarious players.
What a crappy. We're never going to find out the truth. We're never going to know the truth ever. Mm-hmm. It's so jacked up now at this point that you can't believe anything, whether it's real or not now at this point. Mm-hmm. It's so jacked up. It's so wishy-washy, and it's so money laundered that you don't even know.
That's right. So that's a very good analogy.
It's so it's literally. We're never going to know. We're never going to know. Yeah. Everybody have a safe, productive holiday, and wishing you guys well again. If you like this content, this conversations, you could message us, get involved, like, subscribe, do all those cool things that people do to social media stuff. And with that being said, Len, always a pleasure. I'll see you next week, sir.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Family Office.